joined with Richard Young from i-80 Gold. Richard, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So you're CEO of a gold company. I assume that you've got a lot of thoughts about what's happening in the gold market. We were here last year at the World Symposium 2024. It's now 2025. In the last year, the price of gold has gone up nearly $1,000 an ounce. What's going through your head when you think about what's happening with the gold market right now?
That's a great question. For full transparency, our entire family wealth is in gold equities and has been for the last 35 years, actually. But, over the last five, we've taken a view as a family that, central banks have been big buyers of gold since the mid 2010s, and that's increasing. Geopolitical risk is on the rise. Gold has now become the second largest asset class within central bank reserves, overtaking this year the yen and the euro. And when you look at the World Gold Council surveys, central banks are going to continue to buy a lot of gold. So I think gold prices are going to continue to be strong. Now, is that 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000? I don't know. But our view is that we've entered a new phase with gold, and that prices are going to remain stronger for longer.
So as I said, this is the first time we've had an opportunity to chat. For our audience, it's totally new to the story. They're sitting down here, they're doing their due diligence, and we're seeing a lot of that here. A lot of new faces, people coming and introducing themselves to us. Just when you came over to our booth, there was a fan of our channel coming by to say hello, which is kind of new to us. Uh, so a lot of them, they're sitting down, they're going, okay, well, I'm doing my homework. What's i-80 Gold? What's it about? What's the high level overview? What can you tell them?
So we're Nevada based. We're going to create a mid-tier gold producer over the next 6 or 7 years that will take production from under 50,000 ounces this year to between 6 and 700,000 ounces as the 5 gold projects within our portfolio are built. And they're all in Nevada. They're in all close proximity. They're all brownfields projects. And what brownfields means is they're historic mines that we're essentially restarting. So we've got to re-permit them, but the permitting risk is low because they've already been operating mines. We understand the geology, the metallurgy, the hydrology, and so they're low-risk restarts, but there's a lot of value that will be created as we re-permit and restart these operations.
Now you guys are in Nevada. I think a question that we've learned to ask, especially when it comes to Nevada-based operators, is, are you dealing with refractory ore?
Yes, we are. So we have both refractory and oxide deposits. And for the group, our refractory deposits are our 3 underground projects. Now, the challenge with having refractory material in Nevada is, do you have a place to process it? We are one of 2 companies with autoclaves in the state. We currently are doing a feasibility study to refurbish our autoclave.
So let's explain to our audience what an autoclave is.
Perfect. So an autoclave is basically a big oven. So it basically does what Mother Nature did over 1 billion years in terms of oxidizing the ore by heating it up. And so you put the material through the autoclave, an oven. It oxidizes the material, but then allows you to run it through your traditional processing facilities that you would normal oxides.
So it's almost like I order a pizza from Pizza Pizza. It comes in, it's a little doughy. I'm not the type that likes to complain, so I just throw it in the oven and reheat it.
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
Okay, so you guys have various assets, as you mentioned. How many are currently operating? How many are sort of in the development stage?
So we've got 5 gold assets. 1 is ramping up. So we've got 3 phases of development. So the first phase is ramping up the first underground mine that's currently underway. We're going to begin construction of a second underground mine this quarter. And then later in the year, we'll begin the refurbishment of the autoclave. And between those 3 assets, it will take production to roughly about 200,000 ounces a year by 2028. And then phase 2 is both permitting an open pit and our first open pit oxide project and a third underground. And with those permitted in early 28, they'll be shovel ready. And we'll look to bring those into production by the end of the decade. That will essentially double production. And then our third phase is our flagship asset that we are targeting to have permitted at the end of the decade and then begin construction 2030 and see production in late 31. That would take production probably to about 700,000 ounces a year.
The flagship asset is that Granite Creek?
Mineral Point.
Mineral Point, okay. So you guys have a lot going on right now. I think that one of the obvious questions that investors are going to be watching, if they're asking if they're watching this video, is the idea of focusing on so many different operating assets at once, as opposed to just focusing on a single asset. Walk us through that strategy.
We get asked that question a lot, and it's a fair question. And I think that we've just refined the message to talk about the 3 phases. So we're really only focused on 2 projects at any particular time, as well as permitting and feasibility studies, which, we use a number of different firms to assist us with. So we're not biting off more than we can chew. These are manageable pieces that we're executing on. But we do have a really strong technical group, particularly with the hiring of Paul Chowrun, our Chief Operating Officer. He joined 2 months ago. We had worked together at Teranga Gold in West Africa for more than a decade and created a mid-tier gold producer in West Africa and sold that to Endeavour in 2021. So while there are a lot of projects and there's a lot of moving parts, it's bite size and it's something that we can easily execute on given the quality of the team that we've got in place and the jurisdiction. Got to keep in mind that Nevada, along with Western Australia and Quebec, are probably the 3 top gold producing regions having, great technical expertise and a lot of depth that can execute on things like this.
So you guys just raised $173 million, which is a pretty substantial financing. What are these funds going to be used for?
So when we look at our development plans, so to get us through to the end of the decade and producing 350 to 400,000 ounces of gold per year, we need about $800 million, all U.S. figures. 200 to restructure the existing debt on the balance sheet, roughly 4 to refurbish the autoclave, and 2 for everything else. And so this equity raise also comes with a half warrant. So between that 173 plus the half warrant, that's about 300 million of the 800 that we're looking for. We have another 100 million through restricted cash that'll come back onto the balance sheet over the next few years, as well as some other warrants that will come due in 3 years. So that's about 400 of the 800. Then we're looking at 350 to 400 million of debt. And we're working on that. We've got about 12 months to put that in place. And then we're going to look at the sale of a couple of non-core assets for $100 to $150 million that will allow us to overraise to be able to execute on this plan through the balance of the decade.
So is it realistic for you guys to be projecting that the $173 million financing is probably going to be the last time you guys go to tap the equity markets for financing for the next little bit?
That would be based on the development plan that we have. We should be able to build all 5 projects, including Mineral Point, which is about $1 billion, without raising further equity.
Okay, so I think something that gold equity investors always like to ask, that is not always an easy question to ask, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. When we talk about your share structure, let's talk about who the major shareholders are and how I can get comfort. If I am an equity investor, I'm doing my due diligence and I want to feel comfort in the share structure, that it's going to be a clear path moving forward. What can you tell them to give them comfort?
So we currently have a little over 800 million shares outstanding. Assuming the conversion of the warrants that are outstanding, we'll be at $1.05 billion thousand shares, 50 million shares, which is an awfully large number. And the balance will be financed through debt and the non-core asset sales. And so when we look at the value of, so we put out 5 PAs for our 5 gold projects.
All within a pretty short time period.
Yes, we did. We did. And again, I would say that those were conservative and achievable. And the NAV of the 5 assets at $2,900 gold was $4.5 billion. And what we indicated at the time was that all of these deposits are open. And with the infill drill programs that we'll be doing to move them from a PA, which is sort of preliminary economic assessment, to a bankable feasibility study, we would expect the NAVs to increase by a third, taking us to roughly about $6 billion US. So with 1 billion shares outstanding at 1 times NAV, as we approach the end of the decade, we could see a share price of roughly $6 a share. That's what our target is internally.
Okay. Last question here for you, Richard. If I am one of those investors who's sitting around doing my homework, trying to figure out i.e. gold, $6 is the target that you're saying that you're working towards. What is it that, let's just say that this time next year, you and I sit down here at the Rule Symposium 2026, and you say it's been a really successful last year, and you're telling me about what you've accomplished. What does that look like?
So we've got 5 gold projects plus the autoclave refurbishment. So we'll call that a 6 projects. We would expect by the time we sit down next year that we'll have 4 feasibility studies done, 3 gold projects plus the autoclave. We will be refurbishing the autoclave. We'll have completed the recapitalization and have the debt facility and the non-core asset sales in place. And we'll be just focused on execution.
All right, well, Richard, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down and do this. I think that your name is one of the more interesting names to talk about. It's certainly not just one of those never programs, as our editor Jay likes to call them, where it's just drill. You guys have a whole lot going on at once, and it's certainly an interesting story, especially for us who like to cover these types of things. So we appreciate all the work you're putting in, and the fact that you're sitting down here to chat with us. And let's do this again this time next year.
Look forward to it. Thanks for your time.